another Turnheads event. We are here to talk about career pathways, employability skills, and how to flourish in your first few years in the creative industry. If you find our content helpful and you do wish to support what we do, then please tell your friends about us and sign up for free at turnheads.com for more resources. My name is Sam and I'm a full-time graphic designer and the founder of Turnheads. And I'm joined today by Senior Creative Director, keynote speaker, podcaster, and career coach, Jamie Roberts. And she's here to talk to you about 3 secrets to design career success. This workshop is being recorded and it will be available at turnheads.com to watch back at your leisure. So without further ado, I will hand over to Jamie to introduce herself and kick things off.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so awesome to be here. Very exciting to speak to everybody. So 3 secrets to design career success. We're going to just jump right into this so we can maximize our time. You guys can get the most out of this. I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am, if you don't know. So I started my career in 2002, so over 20 years ago, as a graphic designer. I climbed the ladder. I've worked in in-house teams. I've worked in agency teams. I've both hired and mentored and managed creatives. I worked in the products and services industry. I've worked in multiple cities in the US. I've worked for national organizations, global companies, small local nonprofits, all the things. At a certain point in my career, I realized that what I enjoyed most was helping other people move forward and helping the people that reported to me or, my peers or creative friends of mine. And that was where I got the most joy. And so I decided in the end of 2020, when the world was changing and things were kind of on fire everywhere and, people were losing their jobs, that I wanted to be of service to the creative industry instead of being of service to businesses. So I pivoted away from advertising. I was the head of creative at that point. And I pivoted away from that and I started this business, Rock That Creative Job. And I wanted to help people get back into the workforce if they had been laid off or if they were just graduating. And, it was a really volatile time, as I'm sure you remember. So that was kind of the motivation for me starting this coaching business and working with people one-on-one to help them understand how to sell themselves, how to put themselves out there, and just taking everything I learned in my career and using it to help other people move themselves forward in a more successful manner. So that said, now you know why I started the business, who I am, my background a little bit. I want to talk to you about my biggest career mistake, because this is the thing that really clarified for me why I was struggling, and it relates to my career path. So this is my career path in my 20 years in the creative industry. And I started out as a designer and I moved up pretty quickly, senior. I was managing people. I was a creative lead. I was hiring people, managing teams, freelance teams. Then I went to design manager, where I had a full-time team. Then I went to art director, where I had a bigger team, multidisciplinary team, creative director, where I was managing directors, other art directors, and then senior creative director and head of creative, where I held the brand vision for the organization that I worked for. And I was solely responsible for that. And I reported directly to the CMO. So what I thought is that as you move forward in your career, you immediately just sort of became more confident because your title increased, your pay increased, your responsibilities increased, and you gained more knowledge along the way, obviously, as you move through your jobs. And when I first came out of college, I was a little unsure of, could I do this work? If someone's paying me, I'm on the hook for something. Like, what if I don't have any good ideas when someone tells me that they need something? And I had kind of all those fears that are normal when you are first emerging and going into the professional world. And so I thought that this confidence level would just automatically move up as I moved up. But that assumption was very wrong, because this is actually what I experienced. And, I kind of started with a little bit of confidence because, of my education, and I kind of knew what I was doing and I felt like, okay, I can do this. But every time I got promoted, every time I made a move forward, my confidence would take a dive and then I would struggle. And I never really understood why that was. And then when I moved into positions where I was other people were reporting to me, I was managing other people, it took an even deeper dive, because the pressure of being responsible for others made that more critical. And so I didn't quite understand that every time I made a move, I would just start to panic and I wouldn't understand, okay, well, maybe this isn't right. Maybe I don't know how to do this. What if I can't lead this team? What if I can't manage these clients? And all of that imposter syndrome, all those narratives would just come flooding in and make me feel like, I don't know if I can do this, it's another step. And part of it was because I just assumed that I would just naturally become confident the more skills and, experience that I had. But also the other part of it was that I realized about 10 years in that your design career is not actually about you. And this is an interesting perspective because a lot of us go into creative because we have something that we want to put into the world. We want to do something with our time that feels valuable and exciting to us. And, we see the world like nobody else, right? So, I didn't understand in the beginning that this career was not all about me and my desires and my needs. It was about the people that I was serving. And I really wanted my superpowers to be of service to others, but I would really get frustrated when something didn't go my way or an organization didn't see the value that I was providing them with, or, they didn't understand how to use my skills. And, I would feel disrespected. I would feel frustrated. I would feel trapped because maybe I thought the job was something it wasn't. And, this started early because, like a lot of people, I recognized that I wanted to be in some sort of creative field when I was like 5 years old. The moment I got this little Crayola caddy thing for Christmas, it was like, that was it. It was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to manipulate shapes and colors and come up with ideas and make things and put things into the world. And so it was all about me. And it is, when you're a kid, it is all about you. It's what you're doing. There's no stakeholders, there's no end users, there's no clients. It's just you making greeting cards at your kitchen table. And so those ideas were seeded when I was quite young and wanting to be an artist, or, because that was sort of the relevant kind of connection to me drawing and painting and doing all those creative things. But, those all about me thoughts kind of germinated during this time. And I just kind of wanted to do something in my career that I could just be creative all day and just sort of like use all of those skills that I had built up over the last 20 years, But part of the issue with me struggling also, in addition to me thinking it was about me, is that other people didn't actually understand what I do. And I'm sure that some of you have experienced this where, your parents aren't quite sure, like, what are you doing in design? Like my dad would ask me like if they liked my drawings and my mom would ask me like, what do you talk about in meetings? Like they didn't quite understand advertising. They didn't understand what someone in a creative profession would do. And, I recognize that to be successful in your career, it really requires continual self-promotion, both inside the professional realm and outside with people who just aren't, clued into what happens in commercial creative. So making sure that you're aware of this, as I was not, it just made me feel like I was kind of this outcast, like, oh, I'm just in this. It was either I was in this very special field, or I was this weird magical outcast unicorn thing that no one understood. And either of those makes you feel kind of isolated. So these two things kind of merged together and they created this scenario in my head that, no one understood me. And whenever I struggled in my career with that confidence, it was because I felt misunderstood and I felt disconnected. But realistically, I was not self-promoting in the way that made sense. So let's move into why self-promotion is so uncomfortable for us and why I didn't do it, why I didn't place importance there. The importance to me was like getting to know the tools, getting to understand the concepts, coming up with ideas, like challenging my brain. But that was, again, all about me and my skills and leveling up in that way. It had nothing to do with the audience or anyone around me. But if you've ever received, and like, if you're in the US, we would get these telemarketer calls and they would leave this weird automated message that would say, I'd like to talk to you about your car's extended warranty. It was just this weird automated way of trying to get people on the hook to get their credit card numbers. And it felt sleazy and everyone recognized it. And so this is what sales and self-promotion feels like for most creatives. Like you're selling something that isn't even valuable, that you're selling something that isn't a real thing. You're coercing someone, and you're not giving the time and attention to the audience. You're just thinking about, here's what I have. I don't think anyone's going to want it. It feels awkward to tell people what I do, or to explain what I do, or to talk about the value. So I'm just going to hope that they recognize it. And that is part of the confidence issue, because if you're waiting for someone to see your value, you're going to be waiting a while unless you actually tell them what it is. And to do that, you have to understand a few things. So the other piece with sales and self-promotion is that we freeze up and we let our anxiety get the best of us. And, then we end up in this kind of liminal state where we can't move forward, we can't move backward. We're just kind of here. We're stressed out about building something that's going to help us sell ourselves, but we can't quite get it off the ground. And I'm sure everyone has had that experience of like, what do I put in my portfolio? Where are those files? How do I organize them? You actually never get to it because you have this anxiety that what you have isn't good enough. And so that dovetails into the feeling of like not being able to articulate your value. So those were the mistakes that I recognized in the first 10 years of my career. I felt stuck, I felt misunderstood, I felt isolated, and I felt like I didn't really want to talk about what I did in a way that would resonate with other people because it felt awkward to me. It felt like I was forcing an extended warranty on someone that didn't really want it. And so I want to change this for you. I want to change this layer of moving forward into your career, because it's so important to understand there's 3 specific elements that go into understanding how to control your career and how to see it differently. And here we go. It goes with mindset, right? So when we are hindered by our own self-doubt, we just sell ourselves short, or we don't sell ourselves at all, to be honest. And then, we give away our earning power. We take jobs that maybe aren't a fit for us, or we don't feel great about. We work with clients that are really dysfunctional, or don't pay us the right amount, don't pay us at all. And, we kind of blow our chances to expand our careers in the way that we want to, because we assume that what we have is not what someone else wants. And so we kind of stay small. So there's 3 ways to move yourself out of this. And these are the 3 things that once I recognized these concepts, it was so easy for me to start to operate in this mode and get out of that kind of level of anxiety and confidence that I struggled with every time I moved into a new job. And it still does happen when you move into a new role that's expanded, responsibility. You're still going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. But you're not going to wonder why you're struggling. You're going to recognize it as a normal, just human reaction to something that you've never done. So the 3 concepts. The first one is offering. And this is a really big one because it's reframing selling, and it's reframing it as responding to a need. And, when you respond to someone that needs something, you're able to actually think about that from their perspective. And that allows you to, state things that you wouldn't normally say because you actually want to help them, right? It's a place of abundance, and it's a way that you can connect with another human or another organization that feels authentic. And when we do that, we don't feel like we're selling. We don't feel like we're pitching. We don't feel like we're cold calling or doing any of those like really awkward, annoying things that sometimes people tell us we need to do. It's really just understanding the values of your audience and finding all the reasons that you're a match to those values. And your audience wants that. They want you to draw connections between what you have and what they would actually need. And if you passively talk about yourself in a way that doesn't offer a lot of reasons, you're leaving it up to them to draw their own conclusions about what you have to offer. And those might not be the stories that you want them to be thinking, right? You want to control that narrative. So how many people, if you've ever had an interview and you've prepped, So we go to the things that are easiest first, right? We're like, oh, we need the clothes, and then we need to figure out the setup, which I did very recently in this office. You want to have the background right. You want to make sure the sound is on. You want to check your connection, all the things. But then when you get to practicing how you talk about yourself, it's like, oh, that's uncomfortable. So I'll just do a little of that. And then when you get to talking about your work, it's like, oh, that's even worse. It's just, I don't know what to say. So I'm just going to wing it, and hopefully it just comes together. And we all know that that is not how it works. It never comes together when you just wing it. But, what you want to do is you want to use your portfolio as a strategic brand positioning tool, because what you want to avoid is creating this all-encompassing historical view of everything you've ever done or every idea you've ever had. You want to select the work that reflects where you want to go and what your audience is looking for from you. And so just doing a little bit of research, so that way when you are interviewing for a new role, a promotion, to be part of a working group, anything, right? New clients, if you're freelancing, you want to make sure you're showing them things that are going to connect with them. And that's going to resonate with them. And it's not just like, here's what I have. What do you think? Take it or leave it. And, a lot of people they have the same exact story and the same exact portfolio, the same format, the same pitch. And you're not really thinking about your audience. You're not positioning yourself in a way that's going to add value to them. And when you do that, you're again, just talking about yourself very naturally, because you know that this is a thing that they do and this is something they might want, and you can help them. And it doesn't feel like you're forcing something that isn't natural to that human interaction and that connection. So when I graduated in 2002, this is me after graduation, making all of my little self-promotional mailers, because back then your portfolio was on a CD-ROM, and you sent it out through the mail with your printed resume. And I wanted something that would stand out, and no one really had websites. It wasn't, that wasn't commonplace yet. So I wanted something that would stand out. So I created all these little packages, and I called it Creative Wax. And I got these wax pads, and I stamped them with a little logo for my name. And I had this interactive portfolio so they could see my work instead of sending printed samples. That was kind of the norm, to just send samples of your work in an envelope and hope that somebody went through them. But I felt like, okay, well, this is maybe a more appropriate way to do this, because it felt future forward. And, but I graduated after the September 11th terrorist attacks in New York. And so that was not a great time to emerge as a creative professional in the world, because tourism was non-existent, travel. There were so many budgets that were cut. A lot of agencies were laying people off because they lost huge accounts. And I really wanted to make sure that I was presenting myself in a way that let them know that my education could help them achieve their business goals. What I had learned, what I could do, could connect with them. But what I did was I just created a one-size-fits-all, and I sent those out all over the place. And that worked to a degree. I got callbacks for informational interviews, but no one had positions. And so what I wasn't doing was I wasn't tailoring the conversation to meet the needs of that audience. And it was, some people responded to certain things in my portfolio, some people responded to other things, and I really didn't quite know. And so I'd go in and I'd just show them a thing and I'd do my spiel. And then it was like, okay, thank you. We'll call you if we have something. And eventually I did actually get an offer that I turned down because I didn't feel like it was the right one. I felt like it wasn't something that was going to use my skill set, but I wasn't understanding it until I started to go through those conversations and realize, oh, everybody wants something different. They just don't want a designer. They want someone who has this skill set or this experience or this kind of perspective on certain things. So, paying attention to what your audience wants and remembering, like, it's not about you and your work, it's about what you can provide them. That really helped me restructure how I talked about myself so I could, create a more competitive offer, a more unique offer, something that I knew would resonate with that particular audience. And that felt better to me than just going through my and this is about this, and this campaign did this. And I had my kind of, it was like I was just this track of the same statements for different people. And that doesn't always resonate, where when I started tailoring it, it made all the difference in the world. That's how I got the first offer. That's how I got the second offer that I took that ended up staying at that amazing first job for almost 4 years. And that changed my perception of oh, okay, I have to start to adjust things. So when we go to a more compelling offer, it gives you a higher value in the industry. It gives you a higher value with your audience. It gives you a higher value with other creatives because they know that you can solve problems that maybe they can, or you can help them. And you just want to make sure that you're thinking critically and clearly about who you're speaking to, because that offering, it actually feels good if you are connecting it. It doesn't feel good when you're like, hey, do you want this thing? And maybe they don't want that thing. Maybe they have no interest in that thing, but you're still trying to jam it in there because you feel like that's what I have. I have to tell them what I have. But it's not a script. It should be a more thoughtful approach. So making sure that you're actually offering something that will help you get over the fear of talking about yourself, because you know that person's going to be interested. If it's something that they do, something that they might need. I mean, it can be anything from industry knowledge to, a certain type of technical experience that you have that they do, as part of maybe their client brand or their internal promotions. Anything that you can kind of figure out, like, okay, they do a lot of this, like, I'll talk more about this, like adjusting your pitch and making sure that you're offering and not selling, because selling is, no one likes that. No one is interested in selling. So the second thing is alignment. And this is such a big one, because I always tell my clients, just because you have something doesn't mean someone else thinks it's valuable. And so this dovetails into offering, but where we get stuck is sometimes we're in jobs we hate and we think it's everybody's fault but ours. Sometimes we go through interviews and interviews and interviews and nothing is connecting, nothing to gelling. And, we need to look at the reality of the situation and accept that all situations are not for us. And I think it's hard in the beginning when you're first starting out. And I, experienced that with that first offer I got. I didn't feel aligned, but I don't know that I knew that's what it was. Something felt off to me about that job. And it, the people were great and it was close to my house and it was like all the things you would want, but it felt like the work was just not like my highest value level at that point. And this is, a month after graduation. So I felt like I could do more and I wanted to sort of start at a different place, but I didn't know that I was misaligned. I just knew it didn't feel right. But we have to remember that if the business need and your creative aspirations aren't a match, it's not going to work out. And, your hopes of receiving a certain title or certain types of work in that organizational structure, that may never happen. And that can be super frustrating. And, your skills are not automatically valuable to others. So we have to see, yes, we can offer things, but we also have to recognize that if there's not alignment there, what we're offering is it's just never going to be valuable. And I learned this the hard way in my third job out of college, which was for Banfield Pet Hospital. So it's a large, national, actually, I think they're global now, veterinary organization. Started here in the US, and I think they've expanded to other countries outside of the US. They were bought by Mars, like M&M Candy Mars, as part of their pet healthcare line. So I was super excited to work for this company because I thought, oh, I love, the fact that they're taking care of pets, and it just felt mission driven. It was exciting. And there were some red flags in the interview that I wasn't paying attention to because I was so interested in the mission. And so I got into this job. And the reality of it was that I had skills that I could never use because it wasn't what the business needed. And I struggled for 3.5 years in this position because I didn't know why they weren't using me to my full potential. Why can I not, expand this campaign? Why am I not able to use my multimedia skills? Why can I not, use my illustration skills? And this image is me doing the only illustration I was able to do in 3.5 years for a wine label that was for some executive conference that was just a one-off thing where they wanted to have their own branded wine. And they asked if, I could design a label. And I thought, oh, I'd love to illustrate it. And I did this at home at night because I was so excited to use that skill set. But that wasn't a skill set that the company needed. It wasn't what they wanted to move their business forward. And so I struggled through this experience, not understanding that what I had just wasn't what they needed. And that was okay. That is okay. But I didn't think it was okay at the time. And so I kept trying to force it. And I kept trying to wedge myself into these, roles and these projects that didn't need to actually happen, or I tried to expand them and I took too much time. And so I realized, I didn't know it was misalignment at the time, but I just realized something's not right. Like they're they're not using me. And maybe it's because I'm a terrible designer. Maybe it's because they don't believe in my skills. Maybe it's because, I oversold myself for this job and now I can't actually do it. But I realized that I don't know, I don't know what to do, but my confidence is going down. And I realized this wasn't good for me. This is a very toxic experience. And so I needed to move on. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take my third year there. I had to step back and figure out what are my skills and where can I use them? Where can I actually think about where these make sense? Because that misalignment was so difficult and it made me feel isolated. That's why this photo is kind of representative, because it's like, I'm literally in a room with all the lights off and I'm by myself and I'm just doing this illustration. And that's how it felt in that job. Even though I managed a team of freelancers, I worked with a massive marketing department of like 60 people. I felt alone all the time because they weren't using my skills. And it wasn't that, they didn't want to use my skills. They didn't believe in me. It just wasn't what the business needed. So I needed to move on and they needed to find someone that could actually do the things that they needed. A lot of heavy production work. It was not as conceptual as I imagined it to be. And that wasn't working for me at that point in my career. So the alignment is so key. And that's why, when I say it's not about you, it really isn't, because the business doesn't need what you're good at. It's going to be really hard for you to like move yourself forward because it's going to affect your confidence. So effort is most useful when it's aligned with common goals. Absolutely. I pushed so much effort into that job and it went nowhere. I never got promoted. I never had any successes. My reviews were like, oh, satisfactory, and I was thinking, I'm trying to kill it here and no one is paying attention. It's because they didn't need what I had. So I moved myself somewhere else where that effort was actually aligned with their goals. And it was a completely different experience. The third one is empathy. And this is also, these all connect with each other. So empathizing with your audience and what motivates them and where they struggle, that is going to allow you to offer something of super high value. And a lot of people don't take the time to really think about where their audience is at. What are they struggling with? What is the business need? What are the industry challenges? Where does that person need your actual support, need your help? And, in the days of my early interview experiences, we didn't have internet where we could just like Google and figure it out and read all the news articles and everything. You had to do like some serious research. But this has gotten so much easier. So it's so easy to figure out like, what is important to your audience? Are they really big on data? If they are, then when you talk to them, point out all the stats of different things, right? Point out different, like if you created a social media campaign, point out the engagement rate, if that's something that they want. Maybe it's innovation. Maybe you want to show how you've thought outside the box about something. You've redesigned something. You've totally pivoted the way a brand was, conveyed in the market because you thought, okay, well, maybe it's this way. You want to challenge your brain to think another direction. And if they value innovation, they're going to value that. Or, maybe it's about outcomes and you talk about how you solve a challenge, right? And if you're doing conceptual work that you haven't actually done in the world, you can still create the challenge and solve the challenge, but that's what you want to focus on because that's where they are, that's what they're struggling with. They want more, innovation, or they want someone to come in and really dial in on the things that are important to them. The other piece is with empathy is that you can be honest about how something went because perfection is boring. And, if you're honest about something going sideways, you're creating the shared vulnerability and trust with your audience, which creates better relationships. And it helps you avoid getting into a work environment that feels toxic because you're not trying to present yourself as this perfect person. And then when something doesn't go right, there's a conflict because you don't want to own up to like, oh, I made a mistake, or like, yeah, that didn't go great. So being able to like, just, say, yeah, I worked on this project, kind of went sideways, but we were able to, overcome this. And then we pivoted this way and this is the outcome. Or if you're talking about technical skills, you can say, yeah, I wanted to do this thing. I sort of bit off more than I could chew because I didn't know this program. So I had to, teach myself Premiere or whatever. And then I was able to then get this outcome. You always want to talk about the process, but be honest and be authentic about it because no one's perfect and no one expects you to be. And so, that empathy and that vulnerability, it really does create more of a human connection. And people hire humans, not just sets of technical and professional skills. And so they want to know, like, how are you going to, react when something goes off the rails and then there's a scope change or a brief change or a deadline change, or the client doesn't like it, or you have to come up with more concepts at the 11th hour, whatever it is. That happens all the time in business. And so I always wanted to present myself as like, I did this and it was amazing and here's the outcome. And there was very little in the middle of that. And so that's not empathy, because that all those businesses are experiencing those tangles, but in different ways. So you're just connecting yourself with that human. And there's immense value in the struggle. There really is. That's sometimes the most interesting part. And so I recognized this when I was interviewing after Banfield, trying to move out of that position that just was a struggle. And, I didn't understand why it wasn't working. And I took a different approach. And so this was my team for my job after Banfield. It was a environmental energy focused agency. I worked there for 6 years. In this photo, I'm the art director. And it was the most amazing experience, because I realized I just need to be vulnerable and I need to tell people, oh yeah, we did this and then this happened and then there was this event and that kind of went off. And in the interview, I explained my process, but I didn't hide any of that. And what happened was, the person interviewing me, who was the marketing director, said, oh my gosh, we have those problems too. It's so great that you know how to deal with that. And I thought, oh, okay. And then so I started to think, wow, all right, well, what else would they struggle with? And so I in the interview kind of pivoted what I was going to say to sort of align with some of the areas where I thought they might struggle with their clients, or with RFPs, or, business development, like certain things that I had experience with. I just felt like, okay, yeah, we can have real talk. I can empathize with where you are and how hard it is to pull those things together, because I've experienced it too. And that, it was immediate. I got a second interview, I got a third interview, I got an offer within 2 weeks. And I think, just having that real talk and not trying to present myself behind this curtain of like, oh, everything's perfect. That was the thing that really made them see me as someone who had a higher value, because not only could I do the work, but I could also understand what they needed and I could adjust my approach. And I was someone who, was thinking beyond just the technical creative or making it perfect and getting it right every time. I could flow with the areas that didn't go well. So, it's empathy drives emotion, and emotion is what drives action, and action is what gets you hired, it's what gets you promoted. And you want to connect these things together. And like I said, perfection is boring, and people want to know you're not perfect, because no one is, right? And so making sure that you just feel authentic, it's just easier to sell yourself. It's easier to talk about your work. And, you come across as a human and not just a list of resume skills. So the real thing that I kind of envisioned with this, once I started to learn these things, is that the empathy and the offering are the two things that create that alignment. Because if you're empathetic, you're understanding who you're talking to, what they need. And then if you're offering something that they need, they're going to be interested in it. They're going to feel like it has high value, and that's going to create alignment. And alignment is what gets you your best jobs. It's what gets you the best bosses, the best teams, because you're like, yes, we are all walking in step. We're all on the same page. We're all seeing it from the same place, and we all have different skill sets. We're all contributing, but it's at the same level. And that's that team photo from my agency experience. That was what that felt like every day. Those are all different people doing different skills, different jobs, but it felt like it was this just synergistic experience. And I know that it's because of this, but these three things were really what helped me see it differently. So from that point on, that was about 10 years into my career, I started to work this direction. Whenever I had to pitch to a client, whenever I wanted to get a promotion, whenever I wanted to get a different job, whenever I had a freelance business for 10 years, get more clients, that sort of thing. It was so easy for me to do that. So in closing, I just want to say that, wherever you are in your career, whatever you struggle with, these things, these core principles can help you kind of step back and take a bird's eye view, so that if you're frustrated because you feel this lack of confidence, or you're not exactly sure, or you feel anxious if you can do the job, all those things, if you just step back and think about those three things and how you can apply them, it kind of calms you down, in addition to allowing you to move forward in a kind of more direct and strategic way, rather than just shoving stuff out into the world, hoping someone recognizes your value. you're tailoring it. And that means they're going to see the value because it's something that they value. And that's, it's the best way to raise the bar for ourselves individually, but it raises the bar for the industry, because if people see us as this high value, then we're going to be paid more. We're going to be treated differently. We're going to be given seats at leadership tables. We're going to have a voice in the room, and we're going to be able to, use our gifts in the way that they were meant to be used, which is putting them out in the world as frequently as possible. And you'll just, you'll get better work. You'll have a better time in your career, and it'll feel more natural. And so these are the things I wanted to really convey, because I felt like these were the three things that changed the way I approach my career, changed my confidence, and just changed the trajectory of it and my enjoyment of being a professional creative. So that is what I have for you today. And I'd love to chat about questions or anything else that Sam has written down. I saw you writing.
Yes, I've been scribbling away some notes and some questions along the way. So yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. That was amazing. If anybody does have any questions, do put them in the chat. Or if you'd rather unmute and ask yourself, then just use the hand emoji and we'll ask you to unmute and ask away. So I can kick it off. I mean, I wrote down a few. So yeah, and I want to say thank you for sharing your personal photos and your stories and stuff as well, because it's so much more relatable hearing it from someone who's actually lived it than just kind of going down that bullet point list, that you get a lot in these sorts of webinars and things. So yeah, thanks for that.
Totally.
Grace said that she needs your diagram of people understanding what you do for a living on a tote bag.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I know,
that was great.
Okay.
And I definitely like the pie chart about doing your portfolio. I'm actually experiencing that myself right now. So yeah, the procrastination kind of cycle is it's a spiral.
Yeah, it totally is. It totally is.
So I wanted to ask, as when you were sort of a senior creative director, what were the core sort of qualities that you looked for in junior creative candidates that were sort of coming into your studios?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because someone coming right out of school with no experience is not going to be like the super confident person, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I got that, I know it, you've done it, because you haven't done it. And so there's a little second guessing that happens, which is totally normal. But one of the things I really looked for was just the ability to be flexible, the ability to recognize like, oh, okay, we need to change course, we need to pivot. And, part of that was in the storytelling, and that diagram I showed where you're showing the crazy version versus the like perfect version. That was what I started to look for, because I realized once I started doing it, I started getting more aligned in the roles, and I wanted someone that would be aligned with what we were doing. So it's like, if they can handle these, left turns and the different things that would happen that would kind of throw you off like your original path, then they would be successful in the job. They would enjoy it, and we would enjoy working with them. And, it would just be an easier connection. So I think that's one of the things that I look for, was how people talk about their process. And, are they honest? Because we all know it doesn't go perfect. Even when you're coming up with it, it's a conceptual project. It's just for you. It's just for your portfolio. It's still like, you still run into roadblocks, and it might be like, oh, I don't know how to use this tool, or I thought I could do this, but it actually didn't look how I wanted, so I changed it. That's the stuff that's interesting. And that's the stuff that made me, as a team leader, know that this person can, one, work with my other creatives because they're going to be adaptable to whatever's going on. And two, they're just going to have a sort of can-do, positive attitude of like, okay, that didn't go great. What do we have to do to fix it? Instead of wallowing in the why it didn't work out, and why aren't we doing it this way? And I thought it was going to go this way, and now I'm stuck. It really freezes you when you can't adapt and adjust. And, that's one of the core strengths that we need to build. So that was really what I looked for, was like someone's willingness to be vulnerable and just share that, not everything was great, but here's what I learned, and here's what I did about it. And that's just, it just really speaks volumes to who you are and how you're going to perform within a team.
Yeah, totally agree. Oh, Lindsay's got her hand up. So do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
My big and main question is, I'm older. How hard is it going to be for me to find kind of, jobs for myself within the creative?
Okay. All right. I caught that. It broke up a little bit, but I'm thinking you said you're older and how hard is it going to be for you to find
Yeah,
jobs in the industry? Is that right?
yes,
Okay. Yeah. So don't worry about your age. That has zero bearing. I mean, it's the thing about ageism is what happens when someone, when you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up, it's because you don't know the tools, you feel behind on trends, you're not, paying attention to what's going on now, you're not able to pivot to the future, that sort of thing, right? And if you're doing those things, people are going to recognize that that's a value. So it's very rare that somebody's like, oh, that person, they've already had a career. The best thing to do is if you started out in another space, which I think you said you did, you broke up a little bit, but what you want to do is you want to take that area that you started out in and you want to think of all the ways that experience is a benefit to your current creative focus, right? So do a brainstorm list of these are all the things that make me awesome at this because I had that experience. And even if it's a separate experience, that doesn't matter. So when you go into an interview conversation, you draw on that and you say, okay, so because I, experienced this, I'm awesome at research because that was kind of foundational for me. So now that I know, because I learned that, now I'm good at this. And so making sure you're connecting those worlds, that's going to let people see you as someone who has an even higher value. And a lot of people discount their value because they're like, oh, I didn't start in creative and now here I am and I'm behind all the people who started. That's actually not true because you have these bonus skills that other people don't have because you have a very specific experience. So as long as you're connecting those and thinking about your audience and it's like, oh, okay, they really value research at this company. So I want to tell them about my research experience in my previous career, my previous life, whatever it is, that you're pulling that in and you're making it relevant for them and you're connecting it to where you want to go in the future. So if you think about it that way, it's a plus and not a minus. That you had, a totally different life and now you pivoted. I mean, I work with a lot of creatives who go from one industry and they're like, nope, I hate accounting. I need to do something creative. I don't want to do spreadsheets. And so we talk about well, what are you pulling? What is the value of that experience to you and to your audience? And make sure you lead with that. And, age doesn't matter when you have something that's so good, that's better than what other people have. It doesn't. Unless you are asking for a salary that is double or way out of the range of what someone is looking to pay, you're going to be a high value if you position yourself that way.
Thank you so much.
Of
It's been really
course.
valuable this evening. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Thanks for your question, Lindsay. And we have Melanie as well, who's asked a question in the chat. Similar vein, she says, what sort of thing is good to see in a portfolio? I am stuck with what to add because I have some uni stuff that isn't always appropriate. I'm also a mature student in the same class as Lindsay.
Oh my God. So when you think about your portfolio, you always want to think about where you want to go. And there's no one size fits all. There's no you need to have multimedia and a social campaign and a print campaign and a digital thing. And, it's going to be different for everyone. So if there's a gap where you're like, really, we didn't do a lot of social work, or we didn't do a lot of multimedia, or, whatever you feel like makes sense to showcase your high value skills, that's what you want to add in. You want to round it out by figuring out where the holes are and how to use those to get you to your future job. So, if you're looking at moving into a place where there is a lot of multimedia, those are the types of projects that you want to add in. If you don't want to do multimedia, take those out. You never want to show things that you don't want to do, because it's just like any client presentation. If you have 3 options and you don't like one of them, that's the one the client likes. And that is how it goes with interviews as well. They're like, oh, that's great. And you're like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. I hate doing those, right? So make sure you're positioning yourself, you're looking at the audience like we talked about, but you're also thinking about what is going to get you to the next step. Where do you want to be in your career? What is exciting to you? What type of work? And then put that in your portfolio, because then you can speak confidently about it, because when you're excited about something, you're just going to feel naturally good talking about it. And then again, it's offering that skill set. So So don't look at like what other people have in their portfolios, because they might not be going for the same type of jobs and the same type of work or environment that you are. It's more about your personal journey in the creative profession and making sure that you're filling in so people can see all of the breadth of your skills, and they have confidence that like, oh, we do this here and she does that, and that's awesome, like that we're aligned. So yeah, that's my advice for you on your portfolio. And the portfolio questions are a big one, because we always feel like we don't have enough, we don't have the right stuff. But if you look at it that way, it's just more helpful and you can be more strategic.
Yeah, fantastic. She says great advice, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that kind of rolls off the back of what you were just talking about with the alignment, wasn't it? It's almost like, is it kind of worth, in a way, like searching through some job ads and researching so many companies to kind of see where you might want to fit? And I mean, are there any kind of exercises that you can do in order to understand your own goals and, you know, what you actually want out of a job?
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of what's helped me in the past in moving forward in my career, when I got to the end of kind of a role and I realized like, oh, this isn't working for me, I don't know where I want to go. What I would do is I would just look at job ads in places where I knew I probably wasn't going to work. So look, you know, different cities, different countries, different wherever. And just, I started to make a list. I would just copy and paste the bullets. It's like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds great. That sounds great. And then you kind of have your master list of like, these are the things that I would really love to do. And you're clear on it. And that's part of it, is like writing it down and putting it out to the universe and being clear that this is the direction I want to go. These are the things I really love. And then you'll start looking at job postings and you'll start seeing like, is this a match to what I want? Is this a match that? And a lot of jobs are wish lists, right? Job ads are wish lists. 70% of the skills people are actually going to have. That other 30%, they're just like, maybe we can get someone that does this and also writes copy and whatever. Like, you're just putting everything in there when you write these job posts. I've written a ton of these, and it's like, well, what are all the things we could possibly ask for? And, you know, you're going to get someone with probably 70% of that. So if you're 70% of that job, then you know that's an aligned job and it's in the industry you're interested in. You know, look at different industries, different places where people would post those types of jobs. A lot of them aren't posted on Glassdoor or LinkedIn or, you know, some of the main like places where we look for jobs. You might have to go to like the company webpage, because some of them are posted internally and that's it. So, you know, making sure you're doing that research and just compiling that master list of like, this is what I want a job to be. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, it's going to be hard to find it. And you're just going to get overwhelmed. But if you have that thing that you're like always going back to, it's almost like your brief. You're like, okay, does this match my brief? Yes, it matches most of it. Okay, I think I can go forward. I think this is a good thing to use my energy and apply to, because we all know it's a ton of energy to apply and to showcase your work and go through the rounds of interviews and whatever else you need to do, you know, some people require design tests, all that stuff. So, you know, you want to use your energy wisely, but like, that's the exercise that helped me the most. And I know helps the people that I work with and coach just get clear on where they're going.
Yeah, 100%. And Alexandra's asking, did the same principles apply for freelance and contract work as well? Oh, sorry, Yumi, did you want to ask a question?
Actually, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. It's just because like, I have some questions, like, in terms of like your website, do you create your own website or do you get someone to create your own website, like a web designer?
Oh, I think Jamie's frozen. I think it kind of, I would say it sort of depends. I think if you, it's what you want to pay for as well, because obviously getting someone to do it for you is going to be a lot more expensive. So yeah, I mean, have you tried also portfolio sites like Adobe?
Yeah.
And places like that where you can upload projects and things, you can use those as a portfolio that you can direct people to, obviously. And then there's places like Wix and Squarespace, which I think are quite like relatively cheap. I think you do have to pay for your domain name and everything. But yeah, places like that might be worth looking at.
Okay, just like I'm aware of like Wix and Squarespace, so I'll probably try to like look at Adobe. And also, I actually have a question again, just like in terms of like bank, is it okay to like, use like your regular bank, or should I get a separate one? Because I have like two bank accounts for my freelance illustration. Should I combine all the money that I give my creator, or should I have it separate?
I would say keep them separate, because it's probably going to be easier for you from a tax perspective. If you keep your business, your freelance kind of stuff separate, because then you'll be able to kind of bring all your invoices together and have them listed in a separate account. So I probably recommend that.
Okay, that's great. As which bank is like the best?
I mean, there's a few out there. I would say, for instance, I've actually just changed to Monzo, because a lot of the online ones like Monzo and I think it's Chase Bank, places like that, they don't charge you any fees.
Okay.
So they're quite good. I'd have a look at those.
Okay, that's great.
If you do a Google, it should tell you. And have a look at moneysavingexpert.com as well. They
Okay.
recommend some good business accounts.
Yeah, I actually heard about Money Saving Expert. Yeah, exactly. I will give it a shot. Thank you.
Okay, no problems. Jamie, I think you're back. We lost you for a second.
Yes, my power strip was not on, and then I realized that
Oh.
my laptop was not charging. So, you know,
It's all right.
totally fine, right?
Keeps us on our toes. That's absolutely fine.
Designer problems. Yeah.
That's fine. We styled it out.
I'm not perfect. See, so there you go.
Are there any other? I don't know if I missed any questions in the chat. If not, I just wanted to ask you what would you say was the most challenging role in your career so far, and why?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Now, no one's asked me that one before. You know, I have to say that I think there's different kinds of challenges, right? So I think my Banfield Pet Hospital, that one was challenging because I was at this sort of pivotal point in my career where I was like, I know I can do more. I want to do more, but I don't know, like, how do I get there? And this is not the right place, but I was trying to make it the right place. But it was like, I kind of knew I had more to give, and I had enough experience that I was, 7 years in at that point. It was like, okay, like I'm ready to like get promoted or do more, or, experience more and lead more. And it wasn't happening there. So that was a challenge, because it made me think, well, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I'm not built to be a leader or do the things I really, aspired to do in my career. And so that was an interesting challenge. And I would say from a, creative perspective, I think the work that I did in the energy industry was the most challenging, because you're selling air, like you're selling ideas, right? You're selling ideas of like, how the world could be better because of these decisions you make every day. And so we had clients that were selling really complex services. We had a lot of people that were doing solar panels. We had a lot of like, energy efficiency things that were kind of new on the market. And so I had to come up with ways to make that like relatable to an audience that knew nothing about it. And then it's not really a thing. It's like, oh, okay, you get your house weatherized, and then, the polar bears can stay alive. Like, I don't know, like you're trying to connect those two things. And it was just like, ooh, this is a challenge. And so that really stretched my brain creatively, because it wasn't from, prior I had sold products, like goods and products, like physical, tangible products or services. And so it's very clear. It's like, oh, okay, well, you take your pet to the veterinarian, or you buy this thing, or you go to this hotel, or, there's an experience. But when you're selling ideas about like how the future could be for the planet, it was tough. And and each client wants a different thing. So it's like, once you've solved it for one, you're like, well, I can't repeat it over here, because then like they're competing with each other, so it was interesting. And that was where I led my first like official team as an art director, where I was hiring and, building a team out and, managing. I had 27 different clients across the US. I was working on both coasts. I had 2 teams in 2 different offices, one in Boston, one here in Portland. And so it was like, I was working, all these hours and trying to like lead a team and help them come up with those ideas. So yeah, it was creative. It was a really good creative challenge. But I think honestly, that's why I stayed for 6 years, because that was the longest. I mean, by 3 years, I would kind of get like, I think I want to, experience something else, do something else. 3 years was kind of my point where I got bored, but I stayed there twice as long. And I think that's why, because it was like, it was never the same. It was always a new thing. And so my brain was just like wanting that challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
It was intense. I learned a lot though.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Lindsay, she's got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. So I am about to start a work experience unit, and a lot of the stuff that you have kind of mentioned will be relevant. But I suppose my question is, would you, if you get the experience in areas where you weren't so sure you'd be happy, would you go ahead with those kind of just to help you roll them out as a long-term career?
I mean, okay, so clarify what you mean by experience. Like if you like professional experience, like working for.
Yeah, so I'm at university. We've been asked to go and get 60 hours worth of work experience, and I'm like, do I just go for one job that I really want and have that absolutely pebble dashed, or potentially get further into once I graduate, or do I split that time up and scatter my eggs in many baskets?
I think it depends. I mean, you don't want to go for something where you feel like it's not going to give you energy. I always talk about for us, it's ROE. It's not ROI. It's a return on energy, right? And so what we do is sometimes hard, it's challenging, but it's like, if you're getting that return on energy, it's like, oh, okay, I solved it. I figured it out. Even if it's difficult, if you're not getting a return on energy and it's a challenge where it's just like sucking your energy, then that's not the thing. And so sometimes you have to experience that to know. And I've, definitely had that experience in my career where I'm like, I'm going to love this. And then I get there and it's like, nope, I don't love this. I don't love anything about this.
You end up
and you
feeling
just know,
more drained than you do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So if you feel more drained than energetic, because we all know that feeling of like, where you're like, wow, that was really hard, but I feel somehow it's like running, where you're like, I've exercised so hard and I'm so sweaty and out of breath, but like, I somehow feel really good, and so it's that kind of like, if you're getting that, then even that's a good challenge. If you're getting the, like, I want to curl up in a dark room, feeling, then that's not good. Then, but sometimes it's, it's okay to check that out but go with your gut. If something's not going to go great, if you're like, this feels like a mill, this feels like an intensity I knew I didn't want to start out at some large agency. I wanted to be in a small team. And that's what I was looking for. And that was one of the reasons why I, said no to the first offer I got, because it was a really big agency. And I felt like I'm going to be a number and I'm going to feel anxious and I'm not going to get the kind of like guidance that I need in the beginning of my career. I wanted something where like, and the team was like 12 people that the place I ended up working in, this agency. It was great. It was like, yes, okay, this is hard for me still, but I knew it was it just felt like a better challenge than the challenge of trying to like show up amongst all these people and all these projects and clients, So just look for that return on energy. And a lot of times your gut knows,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for tonight.
Of course. Yeah.
And good luck with your applications as well. I hope you find some great places.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight, and especially to Jamie. Obviously, it's been really, really insightful, and really, really great tips there.
Awesome.
Do check out turnheads.com for more resources and the replays of all our events and interviews with people across the industry. Also check out Jamie's website and her podcast. It's called Rock That Creative Job. I've put the links in the chat for you all. And I'll also share that with the replays as well for everybody that joins us afterwards.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing such brilliant insights. And thank you to everyone again for joining us tonight. And we will catch you at the next Turnheads event.
Great. Thanks for coming.